It takes strong men to rule. Alexander was more. He was Prometheus, a friend to man. He changed the world. Before him, there were tribes. And after him, all was possible.
Alexander is a 2004 epic historical drama film based on the life of the ancient Macedonian general and king, Alexander the Great. Alexander was directed by Oliver Stone and starred Colin Farrell, with the film's original screenplay drawn in part from the book Alexander the Great, published in 1973 by the University of Oxford historian Robin Lane Fox. After the movie's release, it received mixed reviews and attracted critical scrutiny from historians with regard to historical accuracy. So stay tuned as we look into the truth behind the movie, Alexander. Alexander was born in Pella, the capital of the Kingdom of Macedon, on the 6th day of the ancient Greek month of Hecatombeion, which may correspond to the 20th of July, 356 BC, although the exact date is uncertain. Alexander was the son of the King of Macedon, Philip II, and his fourth wife, Olympias. The movie has Alexander being mostly brought up by his mother, and later tutored by Aristotle. This follows what is known of Alexander's youth, as when Alexander was 13, Philip began to search for a tutor, and considered such academics as Isocrates and Spicius. In the end, Philip chose Aristotle and provided the Temple of Nymphs at Mysa as a classroom. In return for teaching Alexander, Philip agreed to rebuild Aristotle's hometown of Stagirrea, which Philip had razed, and to repopulate it by buying and freeing the ex-citizens who were slaves, or pardoning those who were in exile. Mysa was like a boarding school for Alexander and the children of the Macedonian nobles, such as Ptolemy, Hephaestion and Cassander. Many of these students would become his friends and future generals, and are often known as the Companions. Aristotle taught Alexander and his companions about medicine, philosophy, morals, religion, logic and art. Under Aristotle's tutelage, Alexander developed a passion for the works of Homer, and in particular the Iliad. Aristotle gave him a copy, which Alexander later carried on his campaigns. The movie portrays Alexander's relationship with his father as turbulent at times, and is destroyed when Philip marries Attilus's niece, Eurydice. Alexander insults Philip after disowning Attilus and then his kingsmen, which results in Alexander's banishment from Philip's palace. It was in 337 BC when Alexander fled Macedon with his mother, dropping her off with her brother, King Alexander I of Epirus, in Dodona, capital of the Molossians. He continued to Illyria, where he sought refuge with one or more Illyrian kings and was treated as a guest, despite having defeated them in battle a few years before. However, it appears Philip never intended to disown his politically and military trained son. Accordingly, Alexander returned to Macedon after 6 months, due to the efforts of a family member, Demaratus, who mediated between the two parties. Before all this, and left out of the movie, was Alexander's decisive role at the Battle of Coronea in 338 BC. The movie then moves at pace. After Philip is assassinated, Alexander becomes king of Macedonia. Ptolemy mentions Alexander's punitive campaign in which he raises Thebes, also referring to the later burning of Persia, then gives an overview of Alexander's West Persian campaign, including his declaration as the son of Zeus by the oracle of Amnon at Oasis, his great battle against the Persian Emperor Darius III in the Battle of Gaugamela, and his 8-year campaign across Asia, but overlooking the just as important battles of Granicus and the Battle of Issus. Persian history expert Kava Varu questioned the omission of the burning of Persanopolis by Alexander and observed that, in the film, Greek forces are typically shown as very organised, disciplined and so on. And what's very disturbing is, when the so-called Persians are shown confronting the Macedonians, you see them turbaned. Turbans are not even a Persian item. Their armies are totally disorganised. What is not known is that the Persians actually had uniforms, and they marched in discipline and played music to stir them on. According to Lloyd Llewellyn-Jones, Professor of Ancient History at Cardiff University, Oliver Stone's movie Alexander displays all the familiar notions about the inferiority and picturesqueness of Eastern societies, so much so, indeed, that in terms of its portrayal of East-West relationship, Alexander must be seen as a stale cultural statement and a worn-out reflection of the continuing Western preoccupation with an imaginary exotic Orient. Oliver Stone has defended many of the most glaring historical issues regarding Persian and Indian history by claiming that he had no time or resources to portray accurately a multitude of battles at the expense of storytelling. He goes into detail explaining how he merged all the major aspects of the Battle of the Granicus and the Battle of Issus into the Battle of Gaugamela, as well as heavily simplifying the Battle of Hydaspes into a straightforward clash while merging the near death of Alexander with the siege of Malai. In a taped discussion at Oxford University, Oliver Stone stated that his presentation of the Battle of Gaugamela is, "I've been told by many historians that the battle is as accurate as they've ever seen in any movie, ever, and what they think happened at the battle." Unlike in the movie, Alexander married 3 times. Roxana, the daughter of the Sogdian nobleman Oxyartes of Bactria, out of love, the Persian princess Stratoria and Partisatis, the former and daughter of Darius III, and latter a daughter of Artaxerxes III for political reasons. Also seen are Alexander's private relationship with his childhood friend Hephaestion and Vagos. Hephaestion compares Alexander to Achilles, to which Alexander replies that Hephaestion must be his Patroclus, Achilles' lover. Upon the death of Hephaestion, Alexander was overwhelmed by his grief, so much so that the historian Arrian records that Alexander flung himself on the body of his friend and lay there nearly all day, long in tears, and refused to be parted from him until he was dragged away by force by his companions. Some have suggested that they shared a homosexual relationship together. However, historians have challenged that claim, stating instead that Hephaestion was his closest and dearest friend. Because of this, a group of Greek lawyers initially threatened to file a lawsuit against both Stone and the Warner Brothers film studio for what they claimed as an inaccurate portrayal of history, stating that the production company should make it clear to the audience that this film is pure fiction and not a true depiction of the life of Alexander. But for me, the greatest crime of the movie is the somewhat lacklustre Opus Mutiny, where Alexander gave arguably the greatest speech in history. Yet in the movie, it feels timid in comparison to the event which Arrian of Nicomedia recorded. Alexander's army goes on into India, where the bloodiest battle, the Battle of Hydaspes, is fought. Alexander is severely injured with an arrow but survives and is celebrated. The battle in the movie is oversimplified, and in reality, Alexander's decision to cross the monsoon-swollen river, despite being close to Indian surveillance, in order to catch the army in the flank, has been referred to as one of his masterpieces. Although victorious, it was also the most costly battle fought by the Macedonians. The fierce resistance put up by the Porus and his men won the respect of Alexander, who, after the battle, asked Porus to become one of his satraps. Later on, Hephaestion succumbs to an unknown illness, either by chance or perhaps poison, speculated in the film to be typhus carried with him from India. Alexander, full of grief and anger, distances himself from his wife despite her pregnancy, believing that she had killed Hephaestion. He dies less than 3 months after Hephaestion, in the same manner, keeping his promise that he would follow him. On his deathbed, Bagos grieves as Alexander's general begin to split up his kingdom and fight over the ownership of his body. Overlooked in the movie, Alexander's body was laid in a gold anthropoid sarcophagus that was filled with honey, which was in turn placed in a gold casket. While Alexander's funeral cortege was on its way to Macedon, Ptolemy seized it and took it temporarily to Memphis. His successor, Ptolemy II, transferred the sarcophagus to Alexandria, where it remained until at least the late antiquity. Pompey, Julius Caesar and Augustus all visited the tomb in Alexandria, where Augustus allegedly accidentally knocked off the nose. Caligula was said to have taken Alexander's breastplate from the tomb for his own use. Around 200 AD, Emperor Septimus Severus closed Alexander's tomb to the public. His son and successor, Caracalla, a great admirer, visited the tomb during his reign. After this, details on the fate of the tomb are hazy. Alexander became legendary as a classical hero in the mould of Achilles, featuring prominently in the historical and mythical traditions of both Greek and non-Greek cultures. His military achievements and unprecedented enduring success in battle made him the measure against which many later military leaders compare themselves, and his tactics remain a significant subject of study in military academies worldwide. The movie follows Alexander's life true enough, though oversimplifies it by omitting important events in favour of others, all while adding those artistic liberties taken by filmmakers. It is an enjoyable movie that is certainly worth watching, though if you want to learn about Alexander, it is best to read the Campaigns of Alexander the Great by Aaron of Nicomedia.
Megas Alexandros, the greatest Alexander of them all.